Welcome to Fringe Element here on the 440 Sports Network. My name is Braden Gall, and you can follow me on Twitter at Braden Gall.
Mine's Erin Dugan. You can follow me on Twitter at the Erin Dugan or Instagram, Erin_Dugan.
My name is Stephen Godfrey, 30 Godfrey on all the social media.
There you go. And you can follow them all over the place elsewhere as well. Split Zone Duo, Secret Base, all kinds of cool stuff. So make sure you check them out. Stephen, good to have you back on the show today, my man.
Hi, guys. Braden,
Erin.
you're in a much nicer place than I am.
Godfrey, we can't see your face like that.
Yeah, I know.
We can't.
He keeps
Sorry.
talking. When he
I
talks
keep
into
trying
his...
to move. Yeah. Since I've last been on the show, I have a different mic set up, so I'm just sort of eating this like my face is.
It's like Wizard of Oz.
I'm gonna just talk sideways into it, I guess. I don't know.
No, the profile shot's nice, and this is of
Lovely.
course why you subscribe to the YouTube page, check out the videos, because then you can see all the things we just talked about. Also, where I'm sitting, of course, as well, fancy Isle of Palms, down on the Atlantic coast, which does still exist, by the way, after the rain came through and took some of the beach, but the kids are out there having a good time. So it's too big of a
normally my job to be in exotic locations when recording, so I don't appreciate that.
That is true. So, Stephen, great to have you here on the show. Of course, we're going to talk we're going to talk a little Bama, Bryce Young, Bama, Tennessee, third Saturday in October. What's going on with Auburn? The state of Mississippi is now the epicenter of all of college football, along with the state of Kansas. I think that's fantastic. The middle class, of course, and maybe some bad luck / injuries / what's going on with LSU, Kentucky, and Arkansas, just to figure out if it's scheduling. What, should people be down about their teams if they're one of those three? Should they be excited because it was maybe a run of some other things that were out of their control? We'll discuss some of that today, of course, on the pod. However, Erin Dugan, before we do any of that, no guest today on the show because Stephen is too good. Erin, we here at Fringe Element are brought to you by
J.E. Dunn, the world's best place to work ever. And Godfrey, I know you have a lot of jobs, but if you ever need a job,
Yes, yeah.
they would maybe hire you. They have very high standards, but they take care of their people.
They do take care of their people. Top 100 healthiest place to work in the United States, Stephen. $5 billion in annual revenue, 25 offices across the country, a bunch of them in the Southeast. And if you'd like to change careers, make a smart decision, go to jedunn.com and check it out. You don't need any experience. They will even hire people with audio video experience like Erin, with journalistic backgrounds like you. I don't even know what my expertise is, but they will hire all of us because they don't need any of that. What they need is someone who wants to work hard and be a part of a team. And that's it. They care about you as much as you care about you, which is pretty cool in 2022, actually.
They especially like geniuses that kind of may or may not have almost failed out of Ole Miss, not because they couldn't do it, but because they stopped trying.
Because they didn't want to. Because they didn't listen to reason.
Come to J.E. Dunn, where we take slackers. No, jedunn.com, of course. Again, also voted the healthiest place to work in Nashville. So if you're in Nashville, make sure you check out jedunn.com. It's really not all that crazy, guys. Just care about the people that work for you in their actual lives. It's amazing what a happy, healthy employee will do for you. It's really quite something. jedunn.com. Okay. I want to start not with Bama and Bryce Young and not with Alabama and Tennessee in the third Saturday in October. I want to start with the epicenter of college football, that exact school that Stephen refused to go to class in, the Ole Miss Rebels, the Mississippi State Bull Puppies. What is happening? How did this happen? How are we here? Ole Miss's defense looks good. The offensive line is good. We knew that. We knew Lane Kiffin was solid. The quarterback is now coming around. They're beating teams they're supposed to. Mississippi State is not doing Mississippi State things.
Yeah.
So what is happening? Why is the state of Mississippi and technically Kansas now the epicenter of college football?
Well, for one, it's the halfway point. Okay, so like we haven't seen. I'm not trying to immediately downplay it, but as someone with a lot of experience in Mississippi, y'all, I've seen this story before. Like I've seen, short of 2014 when they shared the cover of Sports Illustrated. You guys remember that? Like pretty much we've seen these like quick ascensions before, followed by like a swift and brutal return to reality. I don't know if you're going to see that just by virtue of the schedule in terms of like neither one of these teams is going to crater. Definitely. They are well built. The plans that they put in place when they hired these two coaches are working. That's like without a shadow of a doubt. Very positive about that. Suspicious more about Ole Miss down the stretch. They will play a higher quality of conference opponent. Mississippi State, though, what I'm interested in right now is, you guys know my stance on the Heisman, and yet, I've seen these memes coming out of Mississippi State about do they have a Heisman quarterback statistically?
I mean, right now I kind of laugh. I don't know about you.
Right.
I don't know about you, Erin. but I know you do, Steven. Like I see people like, oh, here's so-and-so in my Heisman ballot. And I just kind of go, like, okay, well, we got like the whole season to go still. And it's hard for me to get into, but is Will Rogers great and he's winning games that he's not, maybe Mississippi State doesn't normally win? Yeah.
So do you guys remember Leach's first game in the league?
KJ Costello torching Bo Pelini
smack in the middle of the pandemic. Like we were all distracted, but it was like, I still believe that he has the record, right? The SEC single game passing yardage total in Leach's first game in the league. We kind of laughed at it at the time. The Bo Pelini side of that took more of the conversation. But just to check in with Mississippi State, if you aren't a Mississippi State fan, or for whatever reason you don't follow that part of the West, or maybe you're a Big Ten fan or whatever, everyone said Mike Leach would struggle when he came to the SEC, and struggle is a very gentle way of putting it. He has not. He absolutely has not. The thing that strikes me about both of these programs from a distance is talent-wise, they have become more consistent than than the last, I would say, the previous 3 decades of SEC football, meaning that they are not rising and falling so much as they are maintaining. Now, is it still an ever competitive league? Absolutely.
Small sample size.
Sure. Right. Again, but the roster drop off at Ole Miss this year, the quick and easy narrative this summer was, hey, they're going to come back down to earth, right? They've lost the quarterback play. They don't have the battery that they need.
Guilty. Hand up in the air. Guilty. Totally. Absolutely. Erin, right?
Yeah.
Like I spent all summer saying, I don't know if they can replace that kind of talent.
Right. Well, because they don't historically. They never have. I mean, like I was a beat writer on the team. It was my first job out of college right after Eli Manning left. And they started a kid named Michael Spurlock. And by week like 4 or 5, they had started two other quarterbacks. And in the David Cutcliffe era, that was a big deal. You don't see that now. Now, Jackson Dart was a good quarterback coming in. The thing that I find interesting, and I'm curious what y'all think, or if there's another like instantly recognizable example of this, it looks like Dart is picking it up more in the last couple of weeks as he goes. And my question is like, well, that seems odd. He should have had the knowledge, the reps, and the physical memory of it. But then I'm thinking they really wanted Altmaier to stay on the roster, right? So I don't know if you can tell where I'm going with this. I think they really did go tried and true 50-50 the entire offseason, the entire summer, into August, into reps. If you remember, Altmaier started their second game. They did that Michigan thing that everyone freaked out at the beginning of the season because Michigan had sequential rotation of starting quarterbacks, right?
When you're a 52-point favorite, it's okay. You can switch quarterbacks.
Exactly. Well, yeah, because they were playing like Hawaii and Colorado State. Ole Miss did the same thing. I can't remember the team. One was like a FCS team. I remember that. And I think maybe the other was Tulsa. Doesn't matter. They've settled on Dart, obviously. And I think he's having to catch up a little bit. And then that may be a reason. Honestly, I guess this is insane to say out loud. Lane Kiffin's diplomacy and his like mature management for roster, I can't even say it without laughing, is maybe why you're seeing that accelerating sort of in-season learning curve for Dart, rather than honestly when he transferred in, my guess is that staff knew he would be the number one. Like they just knew.
I would have to agree with pretty much all of that, and just watching Ole Miss this past weekend, and maybe this like a little bit of such a Steven word, but like a microcosmic example of like how long it took them to really get their footing against Vanderbilt, because if all you saw was the score of the Vanderbilt Ole Miss game from this past Saturday, it would not indicate how that game actually went. I was actually at the game. It was homecoming this past weekend, and so we were all there, and if you just saw the score, the first half did not look like the final score looked. And I would say that it took Jackson Dart like a while to get his feet under him. And then once they were able to do that, they were able to show, some pretty impressive things on offense. And a lot of the lead that Ole Miss started to take had to do with like huge chunk plays and, receivers being in the right place and Jackson Dart actually being able to make that connection. But it did take them a long time to get started.
You never want to start analysis of a team with, after allowing 4 consecutive scores by Vanderbilt, the defense found its footing. Like that's not a complimentary sentence. But they did.
Clark, let's give Clark Lee some serious credit. And it's not much of a prediction or going out on a limb here, but I think at the end of this season, that first half against Ole Miss is not going to look as much. It's an aberration right now. It looks super weird, right? Like when I was checking in on that game, I was like, what is going on? Is it turnover hell? Is it something like that? And it really wasn't. I think Clark, one, is a really good schemer. I mean, that was his reputation.
Bye week. Had 2 weeks to prepare.
Exactly. The guy knows scheme enough. And I think what you saw evidence of is, if you don't know this, defensive and offensive coordinators are really, really scripted for like the first quarter, usually the first 15 plays or 2 drives. Everyone's a little bit different. Then you adjust and then you go, all right, raw athlete that I have on my roster, who's better than the raw athlete across from you. We're going to now, all right, we've seen your punches and now we're going to figure out how do we counter and how do we throw how do we do the curveball? Mixing sports metaphors there. But that's what's going to happen when you're Vanderbilt. I was very impressed, though, by the coaching there.
I agree.
And, we're talking about a program on like a 5-year track here. So
I think going back to your Dart thing, and I agree with all that with Clark Lee and Vanderbilt. I think the Dart thing is interesting because he's also not extremely accurate, even at his best. And I think that's where Lane's offense needs to be. It's very timing, rhythm, accuracy driven. So I think he needed to be even further along for his particular skill set to work in that offense because it's not exactly perfect for it. Right. But I do think that both schools, I mean, they got tough games down the stretch. Both of them loaded schedules in the month of November. So we're going to see where they finish off. But for right now, we should be celebrating Magnolia State football, and that's all. That's all. Mississippi State and Ole Miss. We'll get to Auburn and of course Kentucky games coming up this weekend. But I do want to know, like with Dart, with Will Levis, with Hendon Hooker, Jaden Daniels, like what do they all have in common? Of course, they're transfers, which is the narrative. Now, I will say, are we too okay? I don't even know how to ask this because it's kind of just a philosophical question about the game. We've got an expansion of the playoff coming. We want to get more teams involved. We want this game to be more national. Even SEC fans need to know this, that they need to. I know, Godfrey, this is like your thing. But it does feel like we have a healthier, more interesting middle class in college football, in particular in the SEC, than we've had in a long time. Some of that is because teams have hit on coaches and on quarterbacks. But it also feels like we are now extremely quarterback dependent. And I don't know if that's the state of the game naturally. Like Kentucky, look at Kentucky. Is that just the way the game of football has always been, that we are just quarterback dependent, and that's just the way it's going to be because college football is caught up with the NFL, and you need to have a great quarterback to win? Because Kentucky just looks like a completely different team without Will Levis.
What offense are they running, Braden?
They're running a Shanahan, amalgamation of Shanahan and McVay, and so
Right. I think you nailed it. I think it's yes, the game is. Someone's going to be yelling at this as they listen. Like, of course, quarterback play has always been important. Yes, I get that. Was quarterback play as important when teams, as a rule, ran 60-40 run pass? No, it was not. Right. You could bully teams, you could control clocks, you could limit offensive possessions by running the ball and having big fronts on defense. You can't really do any of that stuff anymore. Most of what I just talked about, it's not completely out of football, but it's pretty close, right? I mean, outside of service academies, ball control is not even something that teams aspire towards.
So, Erin, because everyone makes Iowa jokes, we all have our own form of the Iowa joke. But Erin, what is it? Do you enjoy the game more because it's more quarterback dependent now than it was 20 years ago, like Steven just said? Or is it allow teams like Kentucky, like Mississippi State, like Ole Miss that don't normally have those players that we just talked about? It allows them to become more competitive quicker, or even a program like Tennessee to rebuild faster because Hendon Hooker happened to be the guy for the right time with that coaching staff. Like, what is that good for the game? Is that better for the playoff? Is that better for more people being involved? Or are we just turning it into a single position where the entire sport is now still dependent on the single position?
I mean, where my head immediately goes is, when it's not just that, like, run it down your throat offense and just like head to head on the line all the time and just that contact, I'm thinking less concussions, which is of course where my brain goes first. But
sure,
from a spectator perspective,
you're the one.
Yeah. But from a spectator perspective, obviously, like having those like big chunk plays, a fast moving, like, receiving game and all of that is definitely interesting when you're watching it on TV. I think that it's more impactful for the viewer. I think honestly, the viewer is at the core of all of the ways that college football in particular is moving. So I think because viewers mean TV means money, and money dictates the sport. So I hate to bring it back to that. But I mean, I enjoy the fact that, there's teams that don't have to spend, 5, 6, 7 years completely rebuilding the core and fundamentals and lines of their teams in order to get back to be at a competitive level. Like Tennessee is able to do what they do without having to take the rebuilding period that Kentucky took, based on like what kind of offense that they run. So I hear where you're coming from.
Well, like
Not
Arkansas, like look at Arkansas. Like
Yeah.
they're just completely. Are you telling me that all of Sam Pittman's success is now completely dependent on KJ Jefferson? Like that's not the way Arkansas should live.
No, but don't deal in absolutes. The trend, what you're trying to do is identify a trend. It's like steering a ship. It's going to be gradual. Okay. I think what she had a really good point here. Imagine you're a fan of any rank and file team that's not a top 20 brand name. It is automatically better for you if you can turn a program around in a matter of 18 months than it is 6 years.
So
I just said that about Vanderbilt, but that's a different circumstance.
But is that
it's different?
No, I agree, because again, normally those programs that are programs in the SEC, it's programs like 7 through like 13, let's say. But in college football, it's the vast majority of them. It is, programs 22 to 75. And you get one great year because you built to it and you built to it and you built to it and you culminated with a bunch of seniors and great line of scrimmage and a good quarterback and the system stuck, and all of a sudden you got to your 10 wins and you competed for a conference championship. Maybe you got to an Orange Bowl. Like
right.
That's what it used to be. And now it's Tennessee, Josh Heupel year 2, Mike Leach, Will Rogers, KJ Jefferson, Arkansas, Jackson Dart can replace the greatest quarterback not named Manning in Ole Miss history. And I guess to push it forward, to push the conversation forward into playoff expansion isn't that ultimately the point, though, is to have Kentucky and Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Arkansas in believing that they can make a playoff? Isn't that the whole point eventually?
Yeah, I mean, more or less, yes. I think if you can trick them in. Now, I don't think anything has changed. I think the bigger problem still persists, in which we have 4, 5, maybe 6, if you want to be like really liberal about it, power programs that are going to dominate, that are realistic national title contenders. I think, Braden, what you're saying is, can we sell people on the idea of getting excited about the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 seed?
Yeah, hang a
definitely
Sweet 16 banner.
And I think you absolutely can. I think you absolutely can, because although it is wildly different than basketball, as we know, there's that idea of Arkansas has a 10-win year and is the, I don't know how this is going to work, but like the 9 seed. Well, maybe we can pull a first round upset, right? You can sell that.
Ole Miss last year, Tennessee this year. Like,
sure.
To potential 10-win teams that would be irrelevant in a previous system that could have a chance to now actually pull an upset in this system.
And go ahead.
No, I was just going back to the original point, Braden. I do agree that when I think about what you're saying in terms of, does this give people more of an opportunity, not only from a how quickly can you turn it around phase, but just the pure amount of teams that could maybe make an impact. And I think that also comes down to the fact that when you're playing old school, just running the ball down the field like we're talking, there's only so many 350-pound linemen like to go around. So when you don't have to have like, you know what I'm getting at? Like, if you don't, there's only so many of those guys, then
the game's going to operate in space more in the future.
Right.
Yeah. Which it already,
definitely.
it already is.
Godfrey.
Yeah.
All right. I want to ask you guys real quickly then, because I want to talk about the games that actually happened and or are coming up, because Tennessee, Alabama is great, and Florida, LSU is great, and Mississippi State, Kentucky is great, and a lot of good stuff. And I want to know about Auburn. But was it the right decision? Because I think clearly Nick Saban made the decision not to risk not playing Bryce Young so that he would be healthy, ideally, for the trip to Knoxville. He knew that was always going to be a bigger test. I don't know what it is about Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M, and Alabama, and why they get together and why they have the highest rated TV games and they play as close as they can. That singular play call, in my opinion, at the end of the game, is the entire 4-year Jimbo Fisher tenure encapsulated into one play at Texas A&M. You're extremely competitive. You're extremely, you play up to the best team. You've got all the talent in the world, and you just
throw it a yard short.
You just can't do it. You just leave it short.
You throw it out short of the goal line on 4th down.
It's so
into a press cover.
Talk about running a play from 1997. So do you think it was the right decision to leave Bryce Young on the bench? You obviously got the win, assuming he's healthy against Tennessee.
Okay, so just to sorry.
Aaron, come on.
Sorry, Erin, go.
I was gonna say, I mean, yeah, it's only in hindsight that you're for sure that was the right decision, because you don't want to lose to A&M. But in hindsight, yeah, you're definitely glad you rested Bryce Young, right?
I think we won't know until, if Alabama wins, moot point. Absolutely, great piece of chess. I'm interested because the two scenarios that we were just describing in terms of the future playoff like mentality and what you're selling, that's what this weekend is. It's the stalwart. It's one of those like ubiquitous brands that can't be stopped, that has figured out how to eliminate all the uncertainties. And then it's the team of the moment, team of the year kind of vibe. And what the measure of, Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, probably leave it there, right? The measure of those programs is how really now it's how they meet those teams that are red hot and built in a very similar manner to them in the moment. And in this case, it's going to be on the road. So if Alabama wins this game, it's unfortunately, just because we're all kind of numb at this point to the narrative, it's just reinforces the concept of how consistent Saban is.
Yeah, I don't, for some reason, and I think it's probably because what's happening in my head is what you just described, which is I am numb. I don't think Tennessee can win the game, but at some point they're going to break through and beat Alabama. Nick Saban's 15-0 against Arkansas, 15-0 against Tennessee.
Yeah,
this Neyland's going to be a zoo. 110,000. You got the quarterback that can challenge down the field. Like, I don't know, can they protect him? Is he mobile enough to escape Will Anderson, who basically lived in A&M's backfield?
Whew.
Like, I don't.
That is a scary man.
Like, even through all of the things that we know about Tennessee, the positives about Tennessee, the positives about the situation, and all these other stuff, like, it still doesn't feel real. It's the reason they're 7.5. Alabama's a 7.5 point favorite.
It's like just even seeing that, just thinking about that, what that would have, how ridiculous of a thought that would have been like 3 years ago is just crazy to think about, that there's a 7.5 point spread. I think Alabama, as we talk about all the time, they're very quickly able to kind of close their shortcomings or fix mistakes and do stuff week to week. Like, even with, when you only have 5-6 days of practice to turn it around.
Yeah.
But having A&M and Tennessee back to back with what Tennessee is able to do, and I have a feeling that they'll have some creative stuff up their sleeve, they may be exposing, that's going to be, 2 weeks potentially of, if Alabama, the shortcomings Alabama does have, for those to be a little bit more exposed. Normally Tennessee, Alabama wouldn't really have to show off anything against Tennessee in the most recent years in terms of what they're able to do. And this year, I think Tennessee's going to give them a run for their money. I do not think they will win the game, but I think it will be within two touchdowns.
Slightly different types of offense, A&M and Tennessee. Just a little. Just a little.
And the prep is going to be totally different. I've seen a lot of people doing that, and it's fine because Alabama has done this to our brains. They're like, well, Alabama just played a close game. Nick's going to use that to his advantage all week. Yes, in terms of culture and psychology, yes, because he's going to say, hey, look, you're not perfect. You're far from it. This was a bad team that almost beat you. They took you to the goal, all that stuff. Schematically, they are wildly different in how you prep for this. And wildly. Line adjustments are what determined that final play. Tennessee wants you physically to not be able to see the 11 players aligned before the ball is snapped.
And be exhausted in the late third quarter.
While your upper is the upper part of your lungs are heaving because you just chased someone, regardless of whether it was a completion or not. Look for Tennessee to do this. It's kind of amazing. They will test your conditioning in the first quarter, and they'll run routes deeper on targets they probably won't go to wear you out.
Are we talking ourselves into a close game here? Is that what we're doing?
I mean, I think the spread feels
close.
Yeah, the spread feels right, but I also just
What happens if Bryce Young starts? He plays a quarter, re-injures the shoulder, he's out. Jalen Milroe's in there.
I think it might actually be the spread.
Yeah.
I don't know. If Tennessee doesn't turn the ball over and that happens, for sure, very good chance. I even think Tennessee could be really close if they don't make big mistakes.
If that happens, Braden, I think Jahmyr Gibbs exits the game as a national name.
He might already.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's like, that's what I'm saying. Like, Alabama running back Heisman. Like that might be that moment if they don't have Bryce.
All right, let's do some rapid fire here stuff. We just talked about Ole Miss. They're gonna host Auburn, and Ole Miss as a 14.5 point favorite at home against Auburn is not a normal thing. That's not a thing that happens to Auburn.
Braden, do you know how many times Ole Miss has beaten Auburn in life in the existence of football?
Oh, I don't know actually. No.
Take a guess.
I have no idea.
Since 1933.
You would know this.
All of them were David Cutcliffe. I don't know. 12. 11. Hey, I was close.
You were close.
That was close.
11 times.
Not a lot.
The history of college football.
So let's go rapid fire here. Then what?
And hey, 3 out of those 4, they got a coach fired. So if Ole Miss wins, he's definitely fired.
So what are what do they gain though from waiting? Like that's my question about Auburn. Like what is the strategy play here?
I would actually, Godfrey, I would actually love to hear your take on this because
I'll
been just
I'll give it
bitching
concise
about it for weeks.
I'll give it concise. There's a lot of external comms decisions that they have to make. They are in the middle of an AD search where they are vetting candidates and moving them through. That's taking a long time for a multitude of Auburn reasons. Right, because it's Auburn. They don't want the streams to cross, and there's also a pretty healthy debate right now of, do you just make this a joint announcement of transition? Do you separate it? And then a lot of people are saying, well, why not just get the AD hire out of the way, then fire him? But then it comes on this new AD's watch. These are questions that have not been fully answered yet. That's why.
But I guess my question is, it doesn't matter. You don't need a new AD to make the firing. He's going to be fired. The decision's already been made.
Totally semantic.
I know.
Totally
right.
They could be trying to leverage the new AD if they feel like they've got like some really good options. Leverage the new AD to get a better coach, right?
Well, it's not about the hire though. It's not about the hire though. It's about
which hire.
You mean it's about the fire, not the hire?
Like to me, Godfrey, you correct me if I'm wrong here. To me, hiring the athletic director and firing Brian Harsin are mutually exclusive. Like they're not. We've already decided that he's
both are going to happen. Yes, both are going to happen. But right now, there's a couple things here too that I'll fill in.
Like John Hartwell could be announced, who's the AD at Utah State, who's one of the favorites. John Hartwell could be announced 3 weeks after Brian Harsin is fired. It has no impact on who the new coach is, right?
No, not necessarily. No, in fact, that's one of the big concerns amongst the AD candidates, and it should be was, hey, we've seen how you sabotage the beginning and the end of a coach hiring process. What level of autonomy and what level of leadership am I going to have? That's a huge issue.
I get it, but what does that have to do with
also
physically negotiating Brian Harsin's out?
Back up, Braden. I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Who's the offensive and defensive coordinators at Auburn? Can you name them?
Eric Keesaw. Oh, they're all his guys, you mean?
They're Boise guys. Okay. Yeah. So your interim head coach is probably going to be Cadillac or who's the defensive assistant that
where's Ronnie Gardner when you need him?
Dude, that's not a joke right now at Auburn. Oh man, there's another defensive assistant who played at Auburn. His name escaping me.
I know who you're talking about too.
They will have to go with one of them.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, both of your coordinators are Harsin loyalists, and they know that they're lame duck. Like the other thing that I was told by an Auburn booster this week was, the longer you let it burn, the more unified Auburn becomes, which is not a thing that happens that often.
We said this last week on the show, Erin, right? Like the only thing that aligns Auburn right now is their distaste for Brian Harsin. That's it.
Yeah.
Like that's
like if Lane can beat that spread, if Lane can cover,
which he's going to, by the way.
I'm just so weird about that. Like, I don't know. That maybe that's an Ole Miss alumnus thing.
He's too close to it.
Yeah.
All right. So quickly here with LSU, they'll play Florida this weekend. With Arkansas, 3 straight losses. They've got a bizarre game against BYU this weekend. BYU's not been good against the run, so hopefully
don't schedule that.
With KJ, I agree with you, but with KJ Jefferson in the running game, hopefully BYU's given up like 300 per game on the ground. So like Arkansas should find some space. They're actually favored. But with LSU, Arkansas, Kentucky specifically, I just want you guys to kind of go through each of you to say, all right, is this bad luck? Is this injuries? Is it coaching staff mistakes? Is it just bad scheduling and timing on Arkansas's part, for example? Again, should have beaten A&M, kick bounces off the upright, then you lose your star quarterback. Is it a combination of all of these? How concerned should
which 3 schools?
Kentucky, LSU, and Arkansas. How concerned should
school by school?
Kentucky offensive line is really bad right now, and Levis. There's your answer right there, flat out. It's not working in the bat.
Give me the level of concern fans should have over problems with team versus just outside stuff that some shit just happens sometimes.
I mean, look, Kentucky thought they would kind of have a more of a crest year where they're, make another run at Georgia in the East. I don't think that's going to happen because of injuries, but overall, like the system isn't broken. You have bad injury. I would say luck, but you have a bad injury situation. Arkansas is going to be a more interesting referendum in the offseason. I would like more data points as they go down the stretch. I'm not trying to cop out necessarily, but what's funny is like all offseason, and I think the last time I was on the show, I just I spent 5 months saying, I'm not going to say a word about LSU because I have no idea what they look like. I don't know what they look like, and it's October.
Nope.
I don't know if
Florida LSU is the exact same situation. It's like
it's ruddy.
Yeah.
Napier did a very smart move this offseason, which was he was incredibly quiet, and he knows how bad it is relative to Florida standards. I have a lot of questions about LSU's offense. And Denbrock worked really well at Cincinnati for what Luke wanted to do. I don't know about that side of the ball at all as they move forward.
Erin, you've been inside a program, Erin. Is it, again, just bad luck, bad timing, scheduling, the nature of the game, or more to it than that with these three teams?
I mean,
sorry, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. You can just you can explain away losing to South Carolina because you don't have your star quarterback. You can explain away not being as competitive with Mississippi State because you don't have your star quarterback. Like, LSU again. I don't know. I don't love Jaden Daniels. I don't think he operates within an offense very well, but whatever. So I guess the question for you is the same with those three: just weird situations, bad luck, bad scheduling, or bigger concerns.
I think with LSU, so LSU has always had like massive amounts of talent, at least in that the visible players, their first string. They've always had talent. Their problem almost a large majority of the time is their ability to harness it. We've talked about this, and I've compared it to, or at least made a reference to what Calipari is able to do, able to take all of these, great basketball stars from all over the country that are used to being one-man shows and make them play together. And I think LSU has had that problem in the past of being able to make everything work, even when they had a lot of talent. But their O-line is definitely a work in progress. They do have health issues, and I think some of the injuries have exposed that maybe they have a little bit more of a depth problem than we knew from the jump. So I think LSU's really is like personnel.
How much of the LSU, because that was a ridiculous performance by Tennessee, something we haven't seen in a long time. Hendon Hooker's in complete control. I don't want to undersell how good Tennessee was.
No,
we need to reiterate that.
Those two things are separate.
But how much of that? So are we can separate the two and say LSU has only been involved with Brian Kelly for a couple of months, and that Hendon Hooker and Tennessee are absolutely in a different planet right now than normal Tennessee. Does that make sense? They're separate. Is that what
I think that's fair, but then it's also like from the quarterback position, if we are going to go back to that, just like, that very clear problem is just you just see it teeter between ability to make really good decisions and then just a complete lack of ability to decide what he's going to do. And so you just can't. And LSU, I don't even think it had an interception or a pick until Saturday. So and I know that looks good on paper, but all in all, that means that there's not a ton of risk being taken, but there are mistakes being made. So it's just hard. Like what we said earlier, it is quarterback heavy, and there's other problems too, but you just can't exist with a quarterback that is either making great decisions or making horrible ones or not deciding at all.
Hasn't Kelly said, I'd rather you throw interceptions than not make any decisions at all? Like, I think Brian Kelly said that about Jaden Daniels, but
I hadn't heard him say that, but I would see why.
Godfrey, more Tennessee being up and better and Hendon Hooker, or more questions about LSU? I mean, people don't leave Baton Rouge.
Could be both. I mean, it could be both.
I think it is both.
I knew a lot of people at that game that were Tennessee fans, and I've never seen LSU. I mean, I know fans have their bad moments and they leave games, but there was a lot of people leaving that game in the third quarter. That was bad.
This whole conversation to me makes more sense as we're talking about Kentucky and Arkansas, because I think we both like what Godfrey just said. He's like, it's October and I still don't know. And so I think this question has a lot more to do with Arkansas and Kentucky, which are both systems that we all thought were working, whereas LSU was just a system that we had no idea what it was or what it was going to be. Yeah, and Arkansas, I think, is Arkansas is especially interesting, and I still have questions around that, and I would love for y'all to go into that a little bit more about what exactly there is not working. I know there's been some bad play calling. It does feel like there's been some issues executing exactly what they want to do offensively, but what do you guys think it is beyond just those surface level things?
I mean, the A&M game was pure luck, in my opinion. Like they lose that game out of luck. Like that fumble doesn't happen like that in 100. If you ran that play 100 times again, it would never happen like that. And if you kick the field goal 100 times again, you're never going to hit it off the top of the upright. It's just, to me, that was luck. And then the Mississippi State game was no KJ Jefferson for the most part. Again, that's why I want to find out what they look like against BYU. I know that was sort of a question inside of a question, because I started asking about Tennessee there and LSU, and I could see LSU not being involved in this because Arkansas and Kentucky are a little bit more established, and specifically around their quarterback injuries. So any bold predictions from you guys? We'll let you guys go here. And Godfrey, we appreciate you hanging out at 38 Godfrey on all the socials, of course. Erin, where can people find you? You got to turn your mic on there, Erin.
Oh no, Erin disappeared.
Erin is
Oh,
gone.
sorry.
There we go.
The
There we go.
Erin Dugan on Twitter and Erin_Dugan on the gram.
And Fringe Element is brought to you by.
It's brought to you by. Never mind. J.E. Dunn.
There you go. J.E. Dunn, one of the healthiest places to work in America. Make right decisions about your career and about your life. Go work at J.E. Dunn. 25 offices around the country. Tons of offices in the Southeast.
And tell them we told you to work.
Tell them we told you there. Over $5 billion in annual revenue. And of course, they got like video games and like record players and
cool shit.
They got their office in Nashville is one of the coolest office buildings I've ever been to my entire life. Because you know what? They care about you, the employee. So come work for them at jedunn.com. All right. Anything crazy that's happening this weekend? Auburn fires Brian Harsin. Tennessee beats Alabama. LSU, Florida, anything. Mississippi State, Kentucky is a really interesting game if Will Levis plays. Shane Beamer's going to do some TikToking, I guess. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Harsin could happen because it's a bye week. That's they're going into a bye week. That's always been one of the consistent pieces of information throughout this process. Not exactly a like revelation there, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it makes a little more sense than earlier would have made the most sense, but we're going to try to make it make sense. I guess this week would. I don't know. I think Alabama I'm super excited about Alabama, Tennessee. Obviously, that spread is very small, but it would be fun for that game to be that close.
I think if Levis plays, Kentucky wins. They've won 3 straight at home against Mississippi State under Stoops, although Mississippi State has dominated that series. I think 10 out of the last 13 overall. If Will Levis plays, I think Kentucky beats Mississippi State at home because that feels like a moment where Mississippi State does something to cost themselves, doesn't it?
Yeah. Probably, yeah. Historically,
okay.
Could see it.
So. Yeah.
All right. Well, live from the beach here in Nashville, Tennessee. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Turn on your notifications. Check out the YouTube. We got Fringe Element Picks Against the Spread with Stephen Lassen on Friday, so make sure you check all that out as well. Rate, review, subscribe. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. My name's Braden Gall. Go to J Dunn, everybody. This has been Fringe Element here on the 440 Podcast Network.
Bye.